My own daughter looked me in the eye on Christmas Eve and said, "Grandpa's not really family anymore." I'm George Miller, and I spent 40 years building something my daughter never bothered to ask about. She announced it in front of 23 relatives at her mansion's dining table, said I was taking up space that could go to real family members, and suggested I spend next Christmas at the senior center. What she didn't know was that the mansion she thought belonged to her husband's family was actually mine. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. And the trust fund she'd been spending from for 15 years was about to disappear. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I just excused myself to the bathroom, pulled out my phone, and made one call that would change everything. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're from, because this story begins 4 decades ago when I made a decision about the difference between loving your children and letting them forget where they came from. Most people look at me and see exactly what my daughter Jennifer sees, an 82-year-old man who drives a 20-year-old Honda Civic with rust spots and a faded bumper sticker from a place nobody remembers. Someone who wears the same 3 flannel shirts from JCPenney on rotation and brings store-brand cookies to family gatherings where everyone else shows up with fancy bakery boxes. Jennifer Miller-Patterson, 47 years old, married to Derek Patterson, who runs what she calls a successful wealth management firm, living in a 7,000-square-foot house in Connecticut, and absolutely convinced that her father is a burden she inherited from a simpler time. "Dad, you really should consider moving into one of those nice assisted living communities," she told me last Thanksgiving. Derek's clients would be confused if they knew his father-in-law still lives in that tiny apartment where I raised her after her mother died. The one-bedroom place with the kitchen table where she did her homework every night while I worked double shifts. But Jennifer doesn't talk about those years much anymore. Not since she married into what she thinks is old money and started introducing me as her father who did his best with limited means. The first sign I was losing my daughter happened about 5 years ago. She stopped calling me Dad in public. It became George in casual conversation, then just my father when talking to Derek's associates, and eventually that old man who raised me when she'd had too much wine at dinner parties. I heard that one myself when I arrived early to her birthday celebration 2 years ago. She was in the kitchen, telling her friends about her humble beginnings and how far she'd come, how she'd pulled herself up despite having a father who never quite understood ambition. The second sign came when she started managing my finances without asking. Jennifer, who has a degree in communications and has never balanced a checkbook in her life, suddenly became very concerned about my spending. "Dad, I've set up automatic transfers from your account to a savings fund I control. You don't need to worry about money anymore. Just let me handle everything." When I asked to see the statements, she laughed and patted my hand like I was a confused child. "Dad, you're 82. You don't need the stress of managing finances. Trust me." What Jennifer doesn't know is that I've been watching every transfer she makes from what she thinks is my only bank account, the small checking account at the local credit union with about $12,000 that I let her see. She's been moving $300 a month into her own investment account, telling me it's for my future care. I have the statements, I have the transfer records. I've been documenting everything for 3 years. But the breaking point wasn't the stealing or the condescension or even the public embarrassment. It was what happened at Christmas Eve dinner last week when Jennifer decided I no longer deserved a seat at the family table. Derek's parents were visiting from Boston, along with his sister and her investment banker husband, plus Jennifer and Derek's 3 children, my grandchildren, who barely know my name. 23 people crowded into that enormous dining room with the crystal chandelier and the table that seats 24. I arrived at 6 o'clock like the invitation said, carrying a tin of those butter cookies from the grocery store because it's all I could afford according to the budget Jennifer set for me. Derek's mother took one look at the tin and handed it to their housekeeper with instructions to put somewhere in the back. The children's table would be fine for those, she said, with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Dinner was catered by some fancy company from Manhattan. 5 courses, each one announced by the catering staff like we were at a restaurant with a Michelin star. I sat at the far end of the table, squeezed between Derek's teenage nephew, who spent the entire meal on his phone, and an empty chair that Jennifer said was being saved for a late-arriving guest who never showed up. Halfway through the main course, Derek's father started talking about family legacy. He went on for 15 minutes about the Patterson family history, their grandfather who started the wealth management firm in 1958, their tradition of financial excellence, the importance of keeping wealth in the family. Everyone nodded along like he was delivering the Sermon on the Mount. Then Derek's mother turned to Jennifer and said something that made my blood run cold. "Jennifer, dear, you've done such a wonderful job building this family. You've really elevated yourself beyond your circumstances. Your children will never have to worry about struggling the way you did growing up." Jennifer smiled and raised her wine glass. "Thank you, Patricia. It means everything to hear that from you. I've worked so hard to create a different life for my children, a life with stability and opportunities I never had." I spoke up then, couldn't help myself. "Jennifer, what do you mean you never had opportunities? I paid for your entire college education. You graduated debt-free." The table went quiet. Jennifer's face turned red. "Dad, not now. I'm just asking a question. You had a full ride to State University, you studied whatever you wanted, you traveled to Europe twice during college. What opportunities were you missing?" Derek jumped in, his voice all smooth and condescending. "George, I think what Jennifer means is that she didn't have the advantages of growing up in a household that understood wealth building and investment strategies. No offense, but working-class values don't always translate to financial success." Working-class values. As if the 40 years I spent building something these people couldn't imagine was just simple, honest labor with no brain behind it. I nodded and went back to my food. Let them think what they wanted. I'd been letting them think it for years. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room for gift exchange. Enormous wrapped boxes for the children, designer handbags and watches for the adults, everything excessive and showy. When it was my turn, Jennifer handed me a small gift bag with tissue paper. Inside was a book called The Joy of Retirement, Finding Purpose in Your Golden Years. "Dad, I thought this might help you adjust. You've seemed a bit lost lately. Maybe some structure would be good for you." Lost. At 82, with more structure in my life than she'd ever know. But I smiled and thanked her because I wasn't ready yet. Not quite yet. The moment came an hour later when Derek's sister started talking about next year's Christmas plans. They were thinking about renting a villa in Tuscany for the whole family, 2 weeks over the holidays, very exclusive, very expensive. Everyone was excited, making plans, talking about which relatives would get invited. Then Derek's mother said, "Of course, it would just be immediate family. We can't have too many people or it becomes unmanageable." Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly, just the core family unit." I looked up from my cookie that I had retrieved from the kitchen. "So, would that include me?" Jennifer glanced at Derek, then back at me with that patient smile she uses when she thinks I'm being difficult. "Dad, you're 82. International travel is probably too much for you at this point. Besides, it's really for the younger generation to bond." "But I'm your father. I'm family." The room got uncomfortable. Derek's mother tried to smooth it over. "George, you'll always be Jennifer's father. But family dynamics change as people age. Sometimes it's better to let the next generation create their own traditions." Jennifer put her arm on me. "Dad, let's be honest. You're not really part of this world. Derek's family, his business associates, the lifestyle we've built, it's just not something you relate to anymore. You'd be more comfortable with people your own age. Maybe next Christmas you could volunteer at the senior center or something. They probably have a nice meal there." Not really part of this world. Not really family. Spend Christmas at the senior center. My daughter, who I raised alone after her mother died when she was 7, who I worked 60-hour weeks to put through college, who I helped with her first apartment deposit and her wedding down payment, was telling me I wasn't family anymore because I didn't fit her new image. I stood up slowly, every one of my 82 years evident in the way my knees creaked. Everyone watched me, probably expecting tears or anger or some old man confusion. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Instead, I smiled. You're absolutely right, Jennifer. I wouldn't want to intrude on your family traditions. I should probably head home anyway. Long drive back to my tiny apartment. I put on my coat, the old wool one with the worn elbows, and headed for the door. Jennifer walked me out, probably to make sure I actually left. At the door, she hugged me quickly. "Thanks for understanding, Dad. This is just what's best for everyone." I got in my rusty Honda and drove to the end of her long driveway. Then I pulled over, took out my phone, and called my attorney. His name is Carson White, and he's been my lawyer for 35 years. He answered on the second ring, even though it was 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. "Carson, it's George. I need you to execute the plan we discussed. All of it. I want everything in motion by tomorrow morning. And Carson, make sure the documentation is delivered in person. I want her to see it coming." "George, are you absolutely certain? Once we do this, there's no taking it back." I looked at the mansion in my rearview mirror, all lit up. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that matches a reckoning. I was up at 5:30 like always, drinking coffee in my tiny apartment kitchen, the one Jennifer was so embarrassed by. The one-bedroom place with the peeling linoleum and the bathroom tiles I'd been meaning to replace for 10 years. I never bothered fixing it up because I was never really here. This apartment was just a costume, like my rusty Honda and my JCPenney flannel shirts. A carefully maintained illusion that let me see who people really were when they thought I had nothing to offer them. The documents Carson prepared were sitting on my kitchen table. 3 sets, each one precisely organized in manila folders with tabs and labels. One for Jennifer, one for Derek, one for the courts, if it came to that. I'd been preparing for this possibility for 3 years, ever since Jennifer first suggested I was too old to manage my own money, ever since she started treating me like a burden instead of her father. My phone rang at 7:15. Carson, calling to confirm everything was in motion. "George, the courier service has both packages. They'll arrive at Jennifer's house at 9 o'clock sharp. Are you ready for what comes next?" I've been ready for 3 years. What about the other matter? The properties closed at midnight, all 6 of them. The titles transferred exactly as you specified. Derek's firm handled the paperwork without realizing what they were processing. Ironic, isn't it? Carson's voice had a hint of satisfaction in it. "Your son-in-law just helped you take back everything your daughter thought she controlled." "What about the trust fund?" "Frozen as of 6 o'clock this morning. Jennifer's access is completely terminated. The automatic transfer she set up or canceled. Every credit card linked to those accounts has been declined. She probably doesn't know yet, but she will soon. Christmas morning shopping tends to be when people discover their cards don't work." I smiled into my coffee. "And the other accounts, the ones she doesn't know about?" "Those remain untouched. $72 million across various investments, exactly as they've been for the past 40 years. She never knew they existed, and now she never will." I hung up with Carson and sat back in my kitchen chair, looking around at the apartment I'd deliberately kept shabby. The water-stained ceiling, the ancient refrigerator that hummed too loudly, the card table I used for dining because I'd never bothered to buy real furniture. Every detail was a choice. Every worn surface was intentional, because I learned a long time ago that people reveal their true character when they think you're weak. Jennifer used to love this apartment. When she was young, after her mother died, she'd curl up on the couch that used to sit where my card table is now, and she'd tell me about her day at school. She'd help me make dinner on the 2-burner stove, laughing when we'd burn something or when the smoke detector would go off. Back then, she didn't care that we didn't have much. She cared that we had each other. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as her father and started seeing me as evidence of a past she wanted to erase. The moment she married Derek and entered his family's world of wealth management and country clubs and European vacations, I became an embarrassment.
a reminder that she came from nothing, even though that was never true. She just never asked where the money for her college came from, never wondered how a man working what she thought were factory jobs could afford to send her to Europe twice, could pay for her entire wedding, could give her $20,000 for her first house down payment. She assumed I'd taken out loans, gone into debt for her, sacrificed everything for her education and her happiness. And I let her believe it, because I wanted to see if she'd appreciate the sacrifice or resent the struggle. Turns out, she chose resentment. At 8:45, I got in my Honda and drove back to Jennifer's mansion. I parked across the street where I could see the front door, but where they wouldn't immediately spot my car. At exactly 9 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. Two people got out, both carrying leather folders, professional couriers, dressed in suits, looking official and serious. They rang the doorbell. I watched through my windshield as Derek answered, wearing a cashmere robe that probably cost more than my car. He looked confused, then concerned as the couriers handed him the folders and asked him to sign for them. He called for Jennifer. She appeared in the doorway wearing silk pajamas, her hair perfectly styled even on Christmas morning. The couriers left. Derek and Jennifer stood in their doorway opening the folders. I was too far away to see their faces clearly, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were reading. The property deeds showing that the mansion they lived in wasn't owned by Derek's family trust. It was owned by Milestone Holdings Corporation, a company I'd created 38 years ago. The mortgage statements showing that every payment for the past 12 years had come from accounts Jennifer didn't know existed. The documentation proving that the 7,000-square-foot house where she'd just told me I wasn't family was actually mine. Every brick, every window, every inch of the property where she humiliated me in front of 23 people was property I owned. And in 72 hours, they'd have to leave it.
My phone started ringing at 9:30. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen 12 times before I finally answered on the 13th call. Her voice came through shaking, somewhere between fury and panic. "Dad, what is this? What are those papers?" I kept my voice calm. "What papers are you referring to, Jennifer?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. These property deeds, these mortgage statements. This says you own our house. Our house. Derek's house. This has to be some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake. I've owned that property since 2012. Bought it through Milestone Holdings when Derek's parents were facing foreclosure during the financial crisis. They were 3 months from losing everything. I paid cash, let them save face by telling everyone they'd restructured their debt. Derek never knew his family almost lost it all." The line went silent for a long moment. "That's impossible. You drive a Honda. You live in that terrible apartment. You bring grocery store cookies to Christmas dinner." "I do all those things, yes. Doesn't change what's in those documents you're holding. Every word is legally binding and notarized. Check with Derek if you don't believe me. He's a wealth manager. He'll confirm those deeds are legitimate." I heard Derek's voice in the background, agitated and loud. Jennifer came back on the line. "This says we have 72 hours to vacate. You can't just throw us out. We have children. It's Christmas." "You told me last night I wasn't family, that I should spend Christmas at a senior center because I don't fit into your world. I'm simply respecting your wishes. If I'm not family, then I have no obligation to provide housing for strangers." "Dad, I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to explain that the Italy trip wouldn't be appropriate for someone your age." "Jennifer, you've been stealing from me for 3 years. The transfers from my checking account to your investment portfolio. $300 a month, $3,600 a year, $10,800 total. I have every statement, every transaction, every transfer you made while telling me it was for my own good." Her voice got defensive. "That wasn't stealing. That was financial management. You're 82. You needed someone responsible handling your money. My money that you didn't know existed. Tell me, Jennifer, how much do you think I'm worth? I don't know, maybe 50,000 in savings? The apartment can't be worth much. Your car is worthless. Dad, that's why we were trying to help you. I stood up from my kitchen table and walked out to the window at my shabby apartment complex. Help me. By taking my money without permission? By telling your husband's family I'm a burden? By excluding me from Christmas because I'm an embarrassment? Derek got on the line, his smooth wealth manager voice trying to take control. George, let's discuss this rationally. Obviously, there's been a misunderstanding. Jennifer was trying to be helpful. Surely we can work something out. My father can speak with you, attorney to attorney. Your father, who tried to intimidate me at Thanksgiving when I asked questions about the property taxes. The same man who suggested I might be experiencing cognitive decline when I wanted to see my own financial statements. No, Derek, I don't think your father and I have anything to discuss. But where are we supposed to go? Jennifer's voice had dissolved into tears now. We have 3 children. All their presents are here. Their rooms, their things. You can't just make us homeless. You have 72 hours to pack and leave. That's more notice than you gave me last night when you suggested I spend next Christmas at a senior center. The property is being transferred to new owners on December 28th. They're paying above market value because they want immediate possession. Who would pay above market value for immediate possession during the holidays? Derek sounded suspicious now, his wealth manager instincts kicking in. A very nice family from California. They have 4 children, and they've been looking for a place in Connecticut for 2 years. They were thrilled to find something available. I gave them a substantial discount in exchange for the quick close. They'll be moved in by New Year's. You're selling our house out from under us to strangers? Jennifer was sobbing openly now. I'm selling my house to a family who will appreciate it. You made it very clear last night that it was never your house. You said I wasn't part of your world, remember? Well, this is what happens when you push people out of your world. Sometimes they take their property with them. Dad, please, we can fix this. I'll apologize. Derek will apologize. We'll tell everyone you're welcome in Italy next year. I don't want to go to Italy. I never wanted to go to Italy. I wanted my daughter to treat me like her father instead of like a broken-down old man she had to manage and hide from her fancy friends. Carson has a full accounting of everything. The house, the trust fund you've been accessing, the credit cards you don't realize are in my name. All of it ends today. You have 3 days to pack your belongings and find somewhere else to live. I suggest you start calling those fancy friends you were so eager to impress last night. Maybe Derek's parents have room for you in their Boston condo. Oh, wait, I own that too. I hung up before she could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off. They'd gotten the message. Now they'd have to figure out what to do with it. I made myself another cup of coffee and sat down with the folder Carson had prepared for me. Inside was a complete accounting of everything Jennifer didn't know about. The 6 properties I owned outright, the investment portfolio worth $72 million, the company I'd built over 40 years that Jennifer thought was just factory work and odd jobs. She'd spend her entire adult life assuming I was poor, never once asking how a poor man managed to fund her privileged life. Now she'd spend the next 3 days learning exactly how wrong she'd been, and by the time she figured it out, she'd be packing boxes in a house that was never hers to begin with. By noon on Christmas Day, Jennifer's carefully constructed world was collapsing faster than she could comprehend. I know this because Carson called me with updates every hour, his voice carrying that particular satisfaction lawyers get when justice is being served with precision. George, Jennifer tried to access the trust fund at 11:45. Her main card was declined at a boutique in Greenwich. She tried 3 more cards, all declined. She called the bank. They referred her to my office. She's left 6 messages. And Derek, He tried to access the equity line of credit on the house at 10:30, discovered it doesn't exist because he never actually owned the property. Then he called his father, who apparently had a very interesting conversation with him about the 2012 foreclosure situation his family never told him about. Derek's father is not handling the revelation well. I sipped my coffee and looked out at the gray December sky. What about Derek's firm? Carson's voice got even more satisfied. That's the beautiful part. Derek's wealth management firm operates out of an office building in Stamford. Building was purchased in 2015 by Milestone Holdings. Derek's been paying rent to your corporation for 8 years, without knowing it. His lease comes up for renewal in January. I took the liberty of sending him a notice this morning that the lease will not be renewed. So he's losing his house and his office in the same week. He can find new office space. But George, there's more. I did some digging into Derek's firm. His biggest clients are people connected to his father's network, old money families who trusted the Patterson name. Once word gets out that the Pattersons needed a bailout in 2012 and that Derek didn't even know his own family's financial situation, those clients are going to start asking questions about his competence. By 3 o'clock, the story had spread beyond Jennifer and Derek. Derek's mother called me directly, something she'd never done in the 15 years Jennifer had been married to her son. Her voice was cold and sharp. "George, this is Patricia Patterson. We need to discuss this situation rationally. You're destroying my son's livelihood over a simple misunderstanding." "Patricia, your daughter-in-law told me I wasn't family on Christmas Eve, in front of 23 people, including my grandchildren. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a statement of values." Jennifer was simply trying to manage a complex family dynamic. You have to understand, our social circle has certain expectations. Having someone of your apparent financial status at family gatherings creates awkward questions. Awkward questions like how your family avoided bankruptcy in 2012, those kinds of awkward questions. The line went silent. Then Patricia's voice came back smaller, uncertain. "You said you'd never tell anyone about that arrangement. We had an agreement." "We had an agreement that I'd remain a silent investor and your family could maintain their reputation. That agreement didn't include watching my daughter be taught to treat me like garbage. You taught her that I was beneath her because I dressed poorly and drove an old car. You never asked why a man with no apparent money could afford to bail out your entire family with a cash purchase." "Patricia, did you ever wonder where Jennifer's college money came from? Her wedding? The down payment on her first house? Did you think I took out loans, went into debt to give my daughter opportunities? I assumed you'd mortgaged your future for her education. It's what working-class people do. They sacrifice beyond their means. I bought your family's house with pocket change, Patricia. The amount I paid to save your reputation was less than 3% of my liquid assets at the time. And I never told anyone because I thought family protected family. Turns out I was wrong about what family means to the Pattersons. I hung up on her, something I'd wanted to do for 15 years. By evening, Jennifer showed up at my apartment. I watched her pull up in her Range Rover, the one leased through an account she didn't realize was mine. She sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before getting out, probably gathering courage or rehearsing what she'd say. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hair wasn't styled. She was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. She looked like the daughter I used to know, before money and status became more important than character. "Dad, can I come in?" Her voice was small, broken. I stepped aside and let her into my shabby apartment. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, really seeing it. The water stains on the ceiling, the ancient appliances, the card table and folding chairs. "Dad, why do you live like this? You have $72 million. Carson told Derek everything. Why do you live in this place when you could live anywhere?" I sat down at my card table and gestured for her to take the other chair. "Because this apartment reminds me of what matters. Your mother and I raised you here. Every inch of this place has memories of when you valued people over possessions, before you learned to judge people by their bank accounts and their clothes." Jennifer put her head in her hands. "I've ruined everything, haven't I? Derek's firm is falling apart. His parents won't speak to us. I've lost access to all my accounts. My credit cards don't work, and we have 2 days to pack up our entire lives and find somewhere to live with 3 children. "Yes, you have. Is that why you're here? To ask me to fix it?" She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "No, I'm here to tell you that you were right. About everything. I became exactly the kind of person I used to hate. I treated you like you were worthless because I was ashamed of where I came from, and I lost the only family that ever really mattered." I looked at my daughter and saw genuine remorse for the first time in years. But remorse wasn't enough. Not yet. "Jennifer, what are you going to do now?" She wiped her eyes. "I don't know. Find an apartment we can actually afford, get a job, figure out how to live without your money supporting everything. Derek might lose his business entirely. We might have to start over completely. Starting over might be the best thing that ever happened to you." I stood up and walked to my kitchen, poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. "You have 48 hours to figure out your next move. I suggest you use them wisely." Part 5. 6 weeks passed before I heard from Jennifer again. 6 weeks of silence that I spent wondering if I'd done the right thing, or if I'd destroyed my relationship with my daughter permanently. Carson kept me updated on the basics. They'd moved into a 3-bedroom rental in a modest neighborhood. Derek had downsized his firm dramatically, lost most of his high-profile clients, and was rebuilding from scratch. Jennifer had taken a job at a marketing agency, entry-level position, learning skills she'd never needed when money was unlimited. Then, on a cold February morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jennifer standing there, but she looked different. She was wearing a simple coat from a department store, carrying a paper bag instead of a designer purse, and her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked tired, but somehow more real than she'd looked in years. "Dad, can we talk? I brought coffee and those butter cookies you like, the ones I used to make fun of." I let her in, and we sat at my card table, the same spot where we'd had our last conversation 6 weeks ago. She poured coffee from a thermos into 2 paper cups and opened the tin of cookies, the cheap grocery store kind that I'd brought to a Christmas party. "Dad, I need to tell you what these past 6 weeks have been like. Not to make you feel guilty, but because I need you to know that I finally understand." I sipped my coffee and waited. Jennifer had always been better at talking when I gave her space to find her words. The first week was hell. Pure hell. We had to explain to the kids why we were moving, why they had to change schools, why we couldn't afford the things they were used to. My oldest, Emma, she asked me why Grandpa George was being so mean, and I had to tell her that Grandpa wasn't being mean, that Mommy had been cruel, and Grandpa was teaching us a lesson. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was her daughter, Emma, my granddaughter, holding a hand-drawn card that said, "Sorry, Grandpa," in crayon with flowers around the edges. "Emma made this for you. She wanted me to give it to you. She said she's sorry her mommy was mean and she misses you." Jennifer's voice cracked. "Dad, my 10-year-old daughter understands what I did wrong better than I did." What else happened? I kept my voice neutral, not ready to forgive, but willing to listen. Derek and I had to sit down and actually look at our finances for the first time in our marriage, really look at them. We had no savings, none. Everything we thought we had was either your money or tied to assets we never actually owned. Derek's business was built on his family's reputation, and when that crumbled, so did everything else.
We're living paycheck to paycheck now, both of us working. The kids pack lunches instead of buying, we shop at discount stores, we budget every single dollar. She pulled out a worn notebook and showed me pages of careful handwriting. Expenses, income, savings goals, grocery lists with prices calculated. I track everything now. Every purchase, every bill. I never knew what anything actually cost because I never had to care. Do you know what ground beef costs per pound? I didn't. I'd never looked at a price tag in a grocery store in my entire adult life. Jennifer, why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not here for money or help or to beg you to give us back the life we had. I'm here because I've spent 6 weeks learning what you tried to teach me my whole life, that character matters more than comfort, that family means showing up for people even when it's hard, that respect isn't about someone's bank account or their clothes or their car. She reached across the table and took my hand. The gesture was so unexpected, so genuine, that I felt tears sting my eyes for the first time since this whole situation began. Dad, I'm here to say thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fail. Thank you for not rescuing me when I deserved to face consequences. Thank you for showing me what kind of person I'd become before it was too late to change. What kind of person are you now? She smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from her in years. I'm the kind of person who packs my kids' lunches and feels proud of it, who works 40 hours a week and comes home tired but satisfied, who teaches my daughter that Grandpa's old car and simple apartment are beautiful because they represent choices and values, not poverty. I'm becoming the kind of person I should have been all along. I squeezed her hand. Jennifer, I never stopped loving you, not even when I took everything away, especially not then. I know that now. She pulled out another piece of paper from her coat pocket. This is an invitation. Nothing fancy. We're having dinner at our apartment next Sunday. Just us and the kids. I'm making spaghetti, the kind you used to make when I was little from the jarred sauce. Derek wants to apologize in person. The kids want to see you. And I want my dad back. Not your money, not your properties, not anything except the chance to rebuild what I almost destroyed. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the girl who used to help me cook on that 2-burner stove, the one who cared about people instead of possessions. She'd been lost for a long time, but maybe just maybe, she was finding her way back. I'd love to come to dinner. And Jennifer, I'm bringing the cookies. She laughed, a real, genuine laugh that reminded me when she was young. Deal, but only if you let me pay for them. All $2.49. As she left, I sat at my card table and looked at the hand-drawn card from my granddaughter. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them fall far enough to learn how to stand back up on their own. Jennifer had fallen hard, but she was standing now, and that was worth more than all $72 million I had sitting in accounts she'd never see. Next Sunday, I'd go to dinner at their modest apartment. I'd eat jarred spaghetti sauce and drink cheap wine and probably play board games with my grandchildren afterwards. And it would be the best meal I'd had in years, because this time we'd all know what really mattered. And it wasn't the mansion or the money or the status. It was this: family who showed up for each other, who valued character over comfort, who understood that the richest life is measured in bank accounts, but in the people who love you for who you are, not what you have. That's a lesson worth $72 million and a shabby apartment I'll never renovate, because some things are worth more than money, and my daughter finally understood that.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.